I'm the lead writer and the creative director. What that means is that I lead the writing team, and I have a so in terms of the writing, I'm really in charge of making sure that's good and that is what we want it to be. But in terms of the rest of the game, I mostly have an editorial function where like I'll consult and I'll come up with some of the ideas. I'll come up with I'll come up with a very basic concept for the skyline, but then that's the easy part. Then the huge amount of work goes to guys like Adrian Balanon and other people on the team and the programmers who have to sort of actually make that happen. But most of my job, besides the writing, is sort of looking at stuff and saying, giving my opinion and saying whether this is, and then like an editor, deciding whether it is part of the game or isn't part of the game, or whether it should be changed or giving feedback. No, I mean it's hardly. It's pretty. It is a misstatement by far to say that all the ideas come from me. We have a huge team of people working together, and my major input across the project, besides the writing, is that editorial role. Well, the challenges are because they fall along sort of a risk-reward ratio that, like, I don't think storytelling is very challenging if you do it all in cutscenes, because then it's like you tell your game, you do your game, and then it's like, okay, time to take a break. You sit back and you watch your story, then you do some more game, and then you do some more story. And that's not particularly challenging because basically what you're making is movies. Now, it's as challenging as any movie in the sense that you have to tell a good story. But in terms of it being unique to games, that's not particularly different. And what we do tends to be a little more challenging in the sense that we don't break the thing up with cutscenes. So we're constantly integrating the story into the gameplay. And that's always tough because, somebody once described it as, doing the kind of games we do, it's like directing a movie where the lead actor is drunk and insane because you have no idea what the player is going to do, right? And so they're going to do things that completely confound what you want as a narrative person, but it's their game. And so that's both the problem with it is that they're going to confound you, but it's also the joy of it because they are an active participant. That's what makes our industry unique. That's what makes games unique. Is that they drive this story. They're at the center of it, and yeah, they're chaotic and crazy. But that's the joy of it too. Whether it's Lara Croft or Booker DeWitt or Nathan Drake or anybody, you're having this character because there's this component of gameplay which is challenge based, right? And Lara's killing, a lot of people, and Booker's killing a lot of people. That it strains their sort of, it is almost an absurd amount of action for one person to experience, whether it's killing or just action. It's a huge amount of. Nobody goes through that much. Nobody's going to experience that much action. Even like a cop or a soldier is not going to experience as much action in their real life as a video game character does in half an hour, of gameplay. So you walk this line, try to create these believable characters, but they're in these fantastical situations. One of the advantages I think we have in Infinite is that the whole world is exaggerated to some degree, but even so, there was a big moment at the beginning of the game, and this is spoilery, so just warning to your audience. Spoiler warning that we thought it was really important that Elizabeth be recognize the violence in the world and the situation in the world because she's never seen any of that before. And we have a moment that's specifically designed where Elizabeth is horrified by Booker, and we wanted. Because I thought that if she was this person who was trapped in this tower her whole life, this Rapunzel-like figure that Elizabeth is, if she were just to suddenly see all this violence and be like, okay, yeah, want to have lunch, it wouldn't make any sense. And so we tried to include that moment, but it was interesting because you're sort of putting that question in front of the player then, which is like, okay, there is a lot of violence in this world, and we recognized it as compared to most games where they just sort of say, they just sort of sweep it under the rug. But it's challenging. It's very challenging. The stuff that's we write that we think fits is in the game. Generally, the stuff that we do a lot of drafts and we have a lot of failed experiments along the way, but we don't like write background of the world that we actually, have tons of background of the world that we buy into. Because I think if it's not on the screen and the player doesn't interact with it, why does it exist? So we have a lot of rewrites and a lot of drafts and a lot of things on the way, but we don't have like tons of like lore that we don't include in the game that we believe is actually part of the world. I tweeted about this last night. They asked me, I'm not generally, we don't talk about exact budgets and things. That's just not what a business does generally. But I can, I would say what I tweeted last night. I said, BioShock supposedly cost $200 million. Somebody must have been sending the checks to the wrong place because we didn't see them. They quoted it, and it's a great article. And Harold the writer is a great writer. And he asked me to try to get the straight scoop for me, and he ended up asking apparently some unnamed analyst. And I mean, look, I think it tells you something about be careful what you read, because having been on the inside of speculation many times, it's amazing how off people can be on stuff. It's pretty far off. Yeah, listen. If somebody was giving me that much money to market the game, that would certainly make me, it would make my life a lot easier, because I would have to be, doing fewer interviews. I could just have TV ads all over the place. But we spend most effort really still in games is doing this. It's talking, directly to the audience and directly to the fans, even though I may not be directly looking at my iPad because I'm new to this. No, that's not. It's not even close. The only time it really gets scary for me is when you get to the point where the product gets big enough where you don't know everybody on the team, and that happens. That never really happened on BioShock 1. It happened a bit on this project. The product is, there's a certain amount of surface area eventually that you have to cover, and once you get beyond the human can only really know about. Sorry about that. It's my wife moving the garbage cans. Human can only know about 60 or 70 people in an office and really keep track of them. And once you go beyond that, you're just kind of doing the best you can. And that was a little challenging because you want to know everybody. But to me, that was the only really scary part in terms of, obviously the budget's nowhere near what they claimed it to be. There is a lot of money involved in these things, and you feel a responsibility because, there are people there. That money is, despite, what people think, it's real people's money being invested, and real people stand to, who have families, stand to lose or gain based upon your work and the work of the team. And so you take that responsibility seriously. You can't wake up every day and think like, oh my God, even if the game was $1 million to develop, if you had told me when I was 20 years old that somebody was going to give me $1 million to do something, I'd be like, that person's an idiot. Because it's it is a ridiculous amount of money, to spend even $1 million on something. At least that's what certainly, as a younger person, before I had sort of done a bunch of games, I would have thought that. I remember on our first game, System Shock 2, when they gave us a check, the first check was for $60,000, and I was like, whoa, $60,000! We're never going to be able to spend that, and we did. No, I think you'll see. You're starting to see a real split. You see. What's great again about what's going on is you have sort of the very low end side, like social and mobile games, and then you have this sort of middle space, which is like Kickstarter stuff. I was just with Chris Avallone yesterday from who are doing from Oblivion, who's doing the Obsidian. Sorry, Chris. Obsidian, who's doing a Kickstarter game, and that's, I don't know what they raised. It was like $3 or $4 or $5 million, something like that. And they're making an old school kind of Icewind Dale style game, and that's great that those kind of games can come, and those games still exist. But then you have the Call of Duties and these huge games which probably make what we spend look like nothing. So you have this very large range of games, and it's because of digital distribution, because of things like Kickstarter, you're sort of seeing all aspects of that curve being fleshed out. If you had asked me on the 2 days before BioShock or 3 days before BioShock 1 shipped, if I'd be doing 5 years from now, I'd be shipping a game in the BioShock universe that, you know, is set in a city in the sky in 1912, I'd be like, I want some of what you're smoking. Um, because you just don't know. And I think you have to leave yourself open to the future and whether that means BioShock games or something else or something very different or something very similar. I just don't know. I just don't know. I think that the thing I'm proudest of is all the nerdy, little weird history, art, science, architecture, politics, stuff that we're interested in as a team, our weird little interests that gamers have demonstrated are also interested in that. And I think that says something about people's perceptions of gamers only caring about sort of like very juvenile things. Though I love juvenile things, I'm very juvenile in most ways of my life. I also have a lot of these weird, nerdy little interests, and I think that gamers have demonstrated that they're a lot more they're a lot more interesting than the public may think they are.